Okay, so good evening to one and all. Welcome to our Rotaract Club of Barbados ProDev series, first of about 5 to come. We are going to talk about a very special topic, one that is somewhat unique to every one of us in our own ways, but still very common in that we all think about it and we have our own different thoughts and perspectives. We're going to talk about public speaking. Let me introduce myself first and foremost. So my name is Corey Silver-Smith. I am a proud Rotaractor, and I'm also going to be the incoming Director of Professional Development for our upcoming Rotaract year. And joining us this evening, we have a special guest. Her name is Davina Layne. Davina is actually a Rotarian, which is a member of the Rotary Club of Barbados. And she also has her own business, Your Corporate Image. And I'll let her kind of take it over and give a small little synopsis of what her business is all about.
Thank you, Corey, and good afternoon, everyone. So as Corey said, the name of my business is Your Corporate Image, and we provide corporate training, and we also provide career management services for individuals. And people usually ask me, well, what does that mean? And basically, we assist you with your career. So if you need to get your CV or resume completed, if you need some assistance with interview preparation, if you need to just have a chat in terms of, some confusion in relation to where you want to take your career, we are here to do that for you. And on the corporate training side, that would be training in things related to human skills, mostly for companies.
Nice. That's a lot that you do all in one short package.
Yes, it can be.
So with your experience, with everything that you said in terms of what you help persons and businesses do, I think this will make this evening's topic very engaging. So thank you for joining us, Rotaract, and everyone here joining us live on IG. So with that, we want to get things started. Maybe a little icebreaker for all of you that are logged in. So I just want to get a sense, maybe from our tech team can give some assistance here. If you guys can shoot some comments, just let us know, how do you feel about public speaking? What's the first word that comes to mind when that topic hits your mind or you have to engage in it? What do you think about, or what's the first word that comes to mind when it comes to public speaking? Feel free to share in the comments.
Someone says scared.
I have a scared. Very true. Any others? Any other hot words that comes to mind when you think of public speaking? Formal. Scared. Formal. Those definitely make sense. Okay, let's stick with those for now. And to be quite honest, those words that came out, they're not unfounded. Like, those made sense. And I think that's our first kind of touch point that I want to ask Davina based on what you guys just shared. So I guess the first thing that comes to mind, actually before we start, let me just also say formally that just in terms of a disclaimer, this is by no means any professional services being offered or rendered from this session. We're just doing a very, it's a conversation, and it's very general in terms of what we're going to talk about today. It does not make in any form an exchange of goods or services with respect to this topic. So just want to put that first and foremost for all eyes and ears and recordings to take note of. Okay, so with that, with words like fear, scared, and formal, there's basically a fear that comes to mind when persons think about public speaking. Can you share any thoughts on that in terms of, is that normal, quote unquote?
Thanks for the question, Corey. And yes, it is very normal. I think that is really the biggest issue for public speaking when you ask people. In terms of why they don't want to do it. And I really think that fear stems from possibly persons not wanting to be ashamed of making a fool of themselves. And so many people fear having lots of eyes on them when they make a mistake or if they make a mistake. And so that really, I would say, is where the fear comes in. I will tell that person and all of you watching online that that is absolutely normal. And fear before you speak publicly can come in many forms. Some people start to shake, some people get butterflies in their stomach, some people you hear their voice quivering or shaking. So there are lots of things that manifest out of that fear. I will tell you, and you will be amazed that even seasoned public speakers have that. And just before we go on stage, and I probably shouldn't call myself a seasoned public speaker, but I can refer to myself. Just before I go on stage, for most things, you get this little, butterflies in your stomach or this little fear. And oftentimes it is really about you wanting to do well. So that fear is normal, absolutely normal. I will say to that, one of the things that helps me personally, I can only speak about myself, is I think about the fact that I am trying. And that might seem simple, but there are a lot of people out there who are not trying. There are a lot of people who don't understand that in order to improve, you need to do. You can't just sit and visualize it in your head. Like, you actually need to speak publicly in order to get better, in order to minimize some of those fears. I'm not going to say get rid of them altogether, minimize some of them. You need to actually do. And if you do, you will make mistakes. Even seasoned public speakers make mistakes. So for me, the fact that I'm actually trying helps me, because there are a lot of people who are not trying. There are a lot of people who, say that they want to do things or say that they want to be better, but they don't actually take the risk or take the shot. And when there is no other way to get better than to try. And it's important in life to try, to fail, and to improve. And so I would encourage you to take the shot. And you don't have to start big by, somebody inviting you to speak at a conference or whatever. Start small. Even, doing interviews is almost a form of public speaking, because you're speaking before people that you've never met before. And especially if it's a panel, etc. So start small, practice, and you will hear me still say things like I'm a Toastmaster, and those are things that we try to get rid of, but it still happens, and so nobody is perfect, and I'm just here today to maybe share a few tips that I've gathered along the way with you.
Nice. I do love that opening, because it is true. Even like I'm saying all no, because it can't be helped. It's somewhat instilled in you from previous school days and events and presentations, where you're trying to find the words in the moment, and you're trying to fill the silence, so just comes naturally. So I agree, like, it doesn't mean that you're not doing what you're supposed to do. It's just really a way to fill the void. As long as we're mindful and we understand that, and then of course, knowledge is power. So by understanding that, you don't feel ashamed or you don't feel guilty of doing it all the time. As long as you are conveying the message you're supposed to or you're aiming to do, then that makes it easier for all parties involved, you as the speaker and your audience. Something you said as well, which I also loved, it's okay to be fearful, basically. It kind of connects just back to biology days back in school, where you think about, where does that come from? And it probably comes from nerves as a part of it. Would you say nerves are also natural? Like, is it okay to always feel scared just before you have to speak? Can you share a little bit in terms of your nerves?
So, well, I don't know if I can say that it is always okay. I don't necessarily see anything wrong with having nerves before you speak. Like I mentioned earlier, I think a big part of having nerves before you speak is the fact that you want to do well. So you're actually caring about what you want to do and maybe feeling a slight pressure because of that. So for me, that's really how I think of it. The fact that, you know, I'm a little nervous because I want to do well and I want to get my message across, and so there's that little bit of pressure. And then nerves also come in obviously because you know you're speaking in front of many people that you may not have seen before or known before, and you're maybe wondering how they will judge you. So yes, those things I would say yes are normal.
Nice. Completely agree as well. Because even before 4 o'clock, big ball of nerves. You probably wouldn't have seen it before we started talking, but even though in this public speaking forum, as far as I know, I'm talking to the internet. So this will be a wider range of people, and they say that out loud, and yes, I'm still nervous, but it doesn't mean that I don't want to do well. I focus on that, and I want to deliver to everyone the intent of this message. We're in again in public speaking 101. You have some great tips so far. It's okay to not be okay. It's good to be nervous. Being mindful of that means you want to do well and try. You need to push yourself amidst the fears and understand that you're capable of public speaking. You don't have to love it, but it's just really another skill in your arsenal that you can apply in your everyday life. That's actually why we nicknamed this session today Connect to Command. Because when we think about connection, we naturally think of a conversation between like even you and me right now, that's a conversation. Or you and a family member, you and one other person, that's a connection and conversation. Would you say you can apply that same principle in a public speaking forum when you're talking to more than one person, audience of people? Do you think you can still connect like you would in a one-to-one conversation?
I believe that you can, and there are a few ways that you can connect. One of the things that I encourage is looking for a familiar face in whatever room you're in. Familiar or friendly, because it isn't always that you will find a familiar face, but a friendly face, someone who seems engaged, someone who may be nodding along with you, and you find them and you glance at them ever so often. I think that really helps you to feel connected when you realize that, okay, here is one person who is actually engaged. And generally speaking, if there is one person, there are probably more. So that helps you to feel a little bit connected as well. And also reading the room. So reading the room is important. I find many times there are public speakers who just deliver what they have to say. They don't necessarily read the room, but public speaking, presentation skills, they all require that you read the room, because it is important that if people look bored, if people look disengaged, if people look disinterested, that you do something to bring them back. Because you don't just want to come and say, well, I have a speech to read and I'm just going to read it, or I have this thing to say and I'm just going to say, and not really care about whether the message gets across, because then you're not really connecting.
Definitely.
So reading the room is critical, and switching things up if people look disengaged or disconnected, to use that word again.
Interestingly enough, it takes me back to school where you were forced to do a presentation or you had to speak on a topic, and you may not have been passionate about it. You were passionate about passing and getting
Right.
through, as opposed to what the teacher wanted you to kind of bring across in terms of the point of the overall presentation. Doing that now, you focus more so on the message you want to convey, as opposed to a write-up that you're remembering by heart to then say word for word. So on that lovely note and reminder, what's your take on preparing in that regard? Like Do you think it's better to have a word by word kind of presentation prepared, to have it kind of memorized just to be safe, or do you think having a point by point basis is better to help convey messages and saves you a lot of time as well in terms of your goal in speaking?
So thanks for that question, Corey. I would say there is no one formula. Different things work for different people. There are some people who will type out their entire speech and have it there. I think that could be good for backups in case of failures, especially if you're maybe like using a clicker or have a slide presentation, but things not really working so well. You can always go back to the speech. Some people prefer points, and that's fine. It is important to prepare, but not memorize things by rote. And rote, that's like an old time word. I hope people understand what I mean by that. I'm showing my age. So not that you're memorizing things like a robot. You're preparing, you're getting familiar with the content so that you can still share about it freely. And preparation is important because I believe, and I think it is true, that I've heard other people say this as well, that when you are acquainted with your material, it really helps you with your confidence. Because when you know what you know and you know what you want to say, then you aren't worried about, an extra thing to make you flubber or flustered or whatever. It is, preparation is the key to, well, one of the keys, I would say, to building that confidence as well. So I think it is important.
Definitely. At the end of the day, confidence has to sell the message, because you can start out, of course, nervous and whatnot, but then you get a groove when you kind of speak, and everything you said so far, like finding a friendly or familiar face, being comfortable with the topic, understanding the room in terms of, people get a little confused about what was just said. You have to go backwards for a minute. Do you have to do an icebreaker? Do you have to kind of shake it up? And once you do that, you find yourself feeling more confident what you're doing and being able to sell the message, because intent and belief really has to start with you, so it can be conveyed to the entire audience as a result. And just to clarify again, public speaking isn't just a big stage in front of 100 or 40 something people, or a speech day or graduation. Public speaking can be applied to anything in your life that you have to basically give a message for. Would you agree?
Yeah, so you have very small audiences, or very small, for example, maybe you have to do a presentation at work and it's 5 people, in the boardroom, etc. That counts as public speaking as well. So you can have from very small numbers to very large numbers, yes.
Perfect, and completely agreed as well. Anything you care to bring forward as a question, or anything you want to kind of maybe bring towards me as a Rotaractor? Because we have to also kind of shake our boots and get into the heat of it sometimes and do our own public speaking. Some things being voluntold sometimes, for example. Any questions you want to bring forth, and you can hash it out?
I don't know if I have a question per se, but I wanted to pick up on something that you mentioned earlier when I talked about the crutch words, the ums and the ums.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned that I don't want to misquote you, that it's not, that there's something not necessarily wrong in itself with crutch words. I will caution, however, they aren't necessarily wrong per se, but I will caution you that overuse of crutch words will turn people off. I have sat in audiences before where people overuse crutch words, and I wasn't sure. I remember traveling and going to a conference, and I'm not sure what was going on with this gentleman. I don't know if he was a bag of nerves, or I don't know if that was just his way, but almost every few words was like a and a ah. And I will say to you that turns people off, because it is, one, very distracting, and two, it actually makes you, when you read up more about public speaking, it actually makes you sound like you're not sure of what you're about. And people don't really trust your message because they wonder if you really know what you're talking about. So that's something that I will say, minimal use, you really have to get it down to minimal use. And it takes practice. Like I said, and like you've heard, I still do it occasionally, but I really try not to overuse, because overuse really brings about another problem. I guess one of the questions that comes to mind now that I've said that is, one of the things that is important is practice. And I know from like when I do interview prep with people think it's weird to like be at home and practicing and rehearsing things. But what would you, I mean, do you think that that's weird, or do people in your age group think that that's weird, being home practicing? And it could be anything. It could be interview questions, it could be the same speech. And when I say practicing, I mean literally reading, because I would tell people practice and they would just maybe go through things in your head. No, you can't do that. Like, you literally need to stand up and vocalize out loud. There are people who think that's weird. What do you think about that?
It might be weird, especially if you walk in on someone doing it and then maybe doing it at first, it would come across like that. I did, like, even before coming from UV, you know, the next goal was to get all those CVs out, try to find second opportunity, internship wise, if not job wise. So I got that tip in terms of practicing. At first, it was like okay, sit down, set it in my head. What's your greatest achievement? Oh, you got speech there, done. In my head. That was practice. Like, I just kind of understood maybe what they might want to hear. And then I had an interview, and that question was asked, and it was completely different from how I thought of it in a quiet corner, just a one-off 10-second kind of thing, versus what was going on right there and then. Like, what I thought of was not coming to mind. I was like, okay, I'm not prepared. Keep your smile, think carefully, and then say something. So I learned from my first interview that practice really has to be practice. So being asked the question, saying it out loud, what you would do, how, like, you time it, you think of how you sounded, record yourself. I did all of that. And it did help, because it showed me that I probably wasn't as confident in my portrayal of the answer versus what was in my head. And that's, of course, always the case. What you might think is comfortable or what makes sense to you would not necessarily what somebody else hears when you speak.
Absolutely.
So recording was helpful, whether it was audio, maybe sometimes just visual, like, are my shoulders squared, am I, yeah, all of that was helpful. And then it was also told, if someone wants to hire you for their organization, you have to be an asset, of course. But then you have to ask yourself as well, how are they an asset for you? How are you going to convey a message wherein I want to be with your company, but I also want to make sure that I'm going to something that will suit me as well.
Absolutely.
All of that comes with confidence in how you deliver your answers, showing them that you are just as invested as a person and not just maybe a paycheck, which might be the case too.
Yeah.
But you have to, of course, it has to make sense in terms of your interview and how you show them you're an asset. And all of that comes with public speaking. So practice is definitely, well, you're not gonna be perfect, but it makes you as close to perfect as reasonably possible. So it does help. It's weird, but it's helpful. Do we have a question? I practice with someone instead of a mirror, but practicing too much makes me more nervous. Have you come across that before?
Yes, definitely. And I will say, I'm one of these people as well, where practicing too much also makes me feel silly. It's strange. So I'm telling you to practice, but for me, yes, I practice, but practicing too much just kind of makes me feel a little like I'm going over the edge. So yes, I have experienced that. But you need to practice to your comfort level. The big thing is to get acquainted with the material, right? Because you don't want to go in and sound like a robot. You don't want to do things in a, just a way that if you're saying your ABCs, like, totally memorized, robotic. You want to get acquainted with the material where you can still add your spin onto it and be natural. So
Makes sense, and nothing to add there. I completely agree. Any other tips for us? Like, what other good things and do's would you recommend when it comes to enhancing your public speaking one-on-one game?
So one of them is actually something you just said earlier, and it reminded me of this guy I follow, whose surname I cannot remember now. Vin. His name is Vin. He's an Asian, and he's great with public speaking. He's on IG. I'll get the IG page for you guys. But Vin says that you should, in order to improve, you should record yourself and then do a few things. So you should listen, you should watch it first without audio and just look at everything. And that, you kind of mentioned that earlier. Look at how you're sitting, look at your posture, look at your gestures, all that sort of stuff. He also says then that you should watch it with the audio to hear how you sound as well. So recording definitely is a good do to practice, especially if you really want to get into the art of public speaking. And there are many people who don't necessarily want to become the best public speaker in the world or one of the best, or even in Barbados or whatever. They just want it as a skill that they've honed to a particular level where they don't feel necessarily scared or traumatized, etc., if they have to public speak. I would still encourage them to do that ever so often, to do the recording thing. I believe that it is, I think that it is very, very helpful. So that is a do that I would recommend.
Agreed. Nothing to add there either. What about, so there's a, what are your thoughts on, I'll say that. Okay, so let's say on IG, there are like these random rules and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one you will see people coming from COVID days where, in terms of feeling comfortable, if you're gonna be in front of the camera, as long as the top look good, you could wear flip-flops and your robe and everything and feel comfortable whilst you're speaking. What are your thoughts on that one?
So I advocate comfort in attire whenever you're speaking. You don't want to be, especially in the Caribbean, we use our hands to speak a lot. And you don't want to feel restricted in any way. You don't want to feel like your clothing is too tight. I will say though, even though comfort is important, if you are going to be doing this top half thing, just please remember not to get up. Please, we had a lot of those issues during COVID, and you definitely don't want to do that. But yes, comfort definitely adds to you being able to flow better, being able to present better. So comfort for me is comfort with your attire, yes, and comfort with your material, which we would have discussed before.
You still make me laugh, so I'm thankful for them. But I completely agree. As long as you feel comfortable and you're not doing anything ill-mannered or not appropriate for work in front of the camera, then no problem with that with me. Any other do's or recommendations for feeling comfortable in public speaking or feeling more comfortable?
Sure. Well, as you mentioned online, because a lot of people, so we're here, we are, speaking publicly. We're speaking to the whole internet, as Corey mentioned earlier. So this is public speaking as well. And for this and anything else that you do online, it's important that you look at your camera, that it's a level. This might be slightly different because I know we're kind of shooting from up above a little bit, but especially at home, if you're presenting, or from a home office, if you're presenting on Zoom or whatever platform, sometimes you see people present and they have all this white space up top of their head, like, there's like all this white space, and then they're, you really have to make sure that you're eye level, that the white space here and the space here is almost equal. Things like that are important. Things like lighting are important as well. Of course, we talked about attire earlier, and especially online. And as a trainer, I will say online training is a lot harder than in-person training because you really have to get people engaged. A lot of times people keep their cameras off, nobody wants to see you, nobody wants to engage. Sometimes you find people are lying down in their beds. So you really have to do more in terms of online engagement to get people up and wired and ready. So those are a few tips I would share for the online people who are making presentations or speaking online. Those are things that you really have to remember. Don't look down in your camera. Oh dear. I remember, watching many people during COVID, and they're like, almost like if they're looking down at you, you could see up their nose, you could see all these strange things. So you really have to make sure that you are positioning your camera at eye level. If you need to lift your laptop by putting it on some books or a directory, all those things are fine, but those things are critical for online meetings. Reducing background noise, making sure you're in a quiet space, all of that. Yes. Distractions are a really big thing with public speaking. You want to ensure that people can hear you, that your message, because with communication, it's about getting the message over to a receiver. So you're the sender, you're getting a message over to a receiver. Noise and other distractions really, block those things out. So you really want to ensure that you minimize distractions at all costs as well.
Especially in the interview.
Yes.
I love things important because it's like you're gonna give them that eye to eye kind of conversation as you're talking. You want to instill, that you're good for the job to come. So all of those things to avoid distractions, the white space, being at eye level, all those things are important, even in that setting. That makes complete sense. On the topic of interviews, we did get a question from the chat. If a person that you are interviewing with has a tick, quote unquote, how can one stay focused?
So this is how the interviewer can stay focused?
I'm thinking that's where the question is coming from. Like if the interviewee has some kind of
nervous tick,
something that they can't avoid, but it might be distracting. That will be hard because it is, with terms of interviewers, sometimes they're biased. Maybe unless the person actually says that in advance, that maybe there's something that, maybe it's a condition, something that they're used to doing. Nervous or not, you have a nervous tick and you have a physical way of showing that. So it's good to disclose that early so that they're aware and try to avoid as much bias as possible. And of course, for the interviewer, they should avoid bias where possible. But anything to add on top of that?
I think it's just a matter of reading through the tick and getting to the meat of the matter. So really just trying to ignore the tick and listen to the substance of what the person is trying to say. You will have people with various, as the person called it, ticks, various nervous things that they do. Some people like flinch like this when they speak. Some people say different words repetitively, and some people stutter. Stuttering, I know sometimes can be a bit off-putting, but it is, it's just something that we all have to work through. We all have different abilities, and having a nervous tick or a stutter or anything really does not rule out someone from having the right skills to do the job. So unless the person with a stutter is going for a public speaking role, generally speaking, if they're working in IT, that is not something that's going to really crash and burn their career. So I would just say, be the adult and ignore it and really listen to the substance of what the person has to say.
What if you flipped it now? What if the interviewer had a
Has a
nervous
tick.
tick and you're the interviewee
What?
that has to?
You have to do the same thing. Listen to the meat of the question and try to answer it as best as you could. I know sometimes those kinds of things, though, especially someone who's already nervous, can put you off as well, or can throw you off, I should say. But you really do have to try and regain your composure and just try to work through it. These are the kind of things that adulting requires, honestly. Adulting can be a rough road sometimes.
Start that conversation.
But we press on.
But funny enough, we're going to talk about that some point during the maybe 2026. We're going to talk about adulting in more detail. So sneak peek, guys. Stay tuned. ProDev Live. We're going to have something featuring adulting. So hopefully you'll be around for that. Maybe March, April. So sneak peek.
And let me just add something quickly as well that came to me. And this is all just part of living in a diverse society. We live in a society with people who are different from us in many ways. They have different abilities. We live in a society with people who are amputees, people who have wheelchairs, people who walk with crutches, people who have all kinds of things, people who look different from us, who sound different from us. So, and diversity is important in a society. So it really is just all part of living with people in a diverse society. We just all need to learn how to live together, because diversity is critical to getting things done and to having different perspectives and to having creativity and to collaborating and productivity, getting things done faster. If we were all the same, the world would be a pretty boring place. So diversity is important, and we just have to work with it.
It's to understand them too.
Yeah.
In the moment, you may not be as understanding, but then kind of reflect back. I had a colleague at work actually. They were from Pakistan, and their mindset is very work oriented. Like during lunch hour, this will be working. After midnight, they'll probably still be working. And it was like no one was forcing them. But that was their mindset. Like before they came to Barbados, it was actually like that's really how they function. And they even came across, well, of course, the bosses love that. But then sometimes the client didn't, because they would go to the client during the client's lunch hour.
Oh, dear.
So once a client is taking a break from everything, like they're asking questions during their lunch hour, try to have a conversation. And again, that even connects to today's topic, because when it comes to connecting with your audience, you have to understand your target audience.
Absolutely.
Based on who's there. Even today, like of course we were focusing on young professionals, but anyone benefited from this kind of topic. So everyone was welcome to come on. But there's some things that are very centric to different, populations, classes, cultures, age ranges, etc. You have to be mindful of your audience in terms of who you're speaking to.
And that's one of the reasons I brought up the diversity, because you really do need to, and that's where reading the room comes in as well. You really do need to ensure that each person is getting the message across. Imagine if you're presenting not only to a multi-generational audience, but you're also presenting to a multinational audience. People might be from different countries. So how are you speaking? You can't go up there and bust out a Bajan accent and think that, not Bajan accent, sorry, Bajan parlance, because it's not the accent, it's the word, it's the verbiage, the words.
Some might argue that too.
Well, actually, yes, true. The accent can pose problems depending on how you speak.
Yeah.
But you really do need to be mindful of those kind of contexts, multi-generational, multinational, whatever. You need to ensure that you're reaching everyone.
Even how you exactly how you even word your conversations. I saw a reel where a Harvard professor wanted to come to talk to a high school in the States, and he actually said that he used ChatGPT, and converted his speech
Oh.
to language that Gen Z persons will understand. So then how we kind of introduced that, they were very skeptical, of course, laughing. I'm like, all right. And then when we started talking, they perked up. They were like, well, laughing of course still, but they were understanding what he's saying.
Right.
So even connecting with your audience in public speaking just goes so far as even how you word your content, how you deliver it. Maybe not even just words, but just actions. Like you may do something that persons will understand. Maybe something from TikTok that came out recently. Not that you have to do that, but it all goes towards your audience and understanding your material and conveying a very confident and understanding message.
Yeah. And to pick up from what you're saying there,
Mhm.
one of the key things that's important to do is to keep your material non-technical.
Yes.
So we have been in situations, I know here in Barbados, we have been in situations where we've had leaders who are speaking and you really need a dictionary to follow what it is that they have to say. And people dissuade you from that. It is not the time to show everybody that you have swallowed Webster's dictionary. You really need to, because as you learn about public speaking, they will tell you that people, the majority of the world, will, I think they say, understand to, I guess what the US would say, 7th grade level, like around teenage years.
Mhm.
You should really keep things to a level that a 14, 15-year-old can understand. And that doesn't necessarily mean basic, but it means don't get highfalutin. Don't get, unless you are an IT provider at an IT conference talking to IT people, don't start talking about, I don't even know IT terms, but don't start mentioning all these highfalutin IT terms and stuff like that. Keep it simple for people to be able to understand. Everybody should be able to understand.
Definitely. I remember some very boring. I'm not even the persons. Think I talking about them. Okay, so guys, if you're still watching, thank you so far. If you have any lingering questions, you can drop them in the chat now, because I'm gonna now ask Davina to give us some takeaways from our conversation today. Any key takeaways you want to kind of leave the audience with as we somewhat come close to the end of our session.
So, from close to the very start, we talked about comfort. And comfort for me is, yes, comfort in your attire, but also comfort with your material. Not learning it exactly word for word, but being comfortable enough to speak from, to ad-lib and to add your own spin to it, but you understand the material, you know what you want to say. We also talked about minimizing distractions, and not just distractions in terms of when you're speaking in person, but especially if you're speaking online, minimizing, being in areas with loud noises and, poor lighting, and distractions in terms of, not how you position yourself in the frame of the camera, those sorts of things. One of the last things we mentioned just now was about speaking clearly. So no one is saying to you that your accent is wrong or whatever, but you can speak standard English so that everybody can understand. How are you saying things? Are you rattling them off really, really quickly? People need to be able to follow you. And on the converse of that, speaking really slowly is also a problem. So not too fast and not too slow. It's important to do what you believe is your comfort level, also in terms of memorization of your material. Going back to the question that was asked in terms of whether you can kind of over prepare, or how that level of preparation makes you feel. Your comfort level with the material, and I would advise you to do what you believe is best for you. It's not a one size fits all. So those are some of the key takeaways that I would encourage people to remember for now.
Nicely summarized. I can add one more as well.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that nerves are natural. It's okay to feel nervous about speaking at any kind of event, whether it's big or small. Public speaking is public speaking. Nerves are okay. It's just a matter of preparing yourself, having that knowledge, and applying that will pretty much help to make it easier, especially as you start, continue on, and it feels natural because you know the content. Usually, you might speak on a topic that maybe you would have a clear idea of, maybe that no one else does. So you have to feel about being called on, like you know the material. As you portray it, you feel more comfortable and you're connecting. Maybe one more thing there too, our whole premise of this is connect to command.
Mm-hmm.
So in commanding your room, commanding the conversation, the public speaking kind of matter you're doing, just connect with your audience.
Mm-hmm.
You're having a conversation with more than one person at a time, essentially. And when you're connecting, you're basically helping them in conveying your message. If you remember that, then you're not too far off the mark when it comes to delivering when you need to.
Yeah, right. One thing that just came to me as well, remember the recording yourself.
Yes.
Listening to yourself, watching yourself, not necessarily together, separately. So turning the audio off, watching, then turning it back on and listening. And that will really help to guide you with some of the things that you maybe need to tweak.
Nice. Anybody? So we're going to summarize these key takeaways for sure. We can post them on our IG page. If anyone wants to kind of take away those same takeaways for more digestion, we can post them on our Rotaract Barbados page. So don't worry about that. I don't think we got any additional questions from the live. No, so with that, I'm gonna take us now to a little giveaway session. If you've been paying attention and you're still with us, then you might be lucky enough to win. Can you tell them what they would win, Davina, if they're so lucky with this upcoming question we're gonna give?
So we're talking about connect to command, and you will be winning an opportunity to hone your public speaking skills with me for about half an hour. So you'll win a connect to command 30-minute session with your corporate image.
Fantastic. So let's see who's going to win that lovely prize. First person to comment in and give us the correct answer will be the winner. So the question is, what are 3 tips shared for delivering a message or any kind of speaking kind of matter on an online platform? What are 3 good tips when it comes to online speaking or presentations? 3. Let's eye the chat closely if anyone's going to.
I feel like we should have the Jeopardy.
That would have been nice. That would have been nice. No one brave enough to give us 3 tips for online speaking? You have a typer? Okay, I'm gonna give this person a chance who wants the house access. No distracting sounds, white spaces. That's 2. And making eye contact. Those sounds like
Yeah.
3 good tips for
Yeah.
online speaking. Okay, brilliant. So I recognize this handle name. That is one of our very own Rotaractors, Scott Chandler. So Scott, yeah, congrats Scott, you've won, and we will be in touch shortly with respect to your prize. Thank you for participating, and Davina, thank you as well for offering this sweet giveaway.
No problem.
Anything you want to conclude with very briefly?
Well, just to say that this, of course, was a very short session, and there are many more tips and tricks that we could have shared with you today. If you have a keen interest in public speaking, I really encourage you to, in addition to all the fun accounts that you follow on IG and TikTok, I really encourage you to follow some great public speakers. We have some really amazing public speakers locally as well. I don't know if I can mention people?
Sure.
So you can follow Dario Richards. He's one of my personal favorites. Absolutely love to hear Dario speak whenever he's speaking. His handle is Mr. Richards, Mistah Richards. Raphael Saul, another really amazing local public speaker. I also mentioned Vin. I need to get Vin's handle, but we will make sure to put it in something for you so that you can see. And there's a girl called Simone Heng that I also follow. She's Asian, but she is, I think she's Australian. And she is also quite good as well. But there's so many others. Those are just a few that come to mind. And you can really pick up great tips from, those public speakers as well. So lots more information up there, and I would encourage you to read widely and to practice, and give things a try. You're afraid, I understand that, we've all been there, but when you answer your first yes to a public speaking, it really becomes a little easier for your second yes. Absolutely. And then a little easier for your third yes. So just break the ice and give your first yes. Give public speaking a chance.
And don't beat yourself down either.
Yeah.
You're not going to be perfect. You're not going to be absolutely brilliant from day one. Even if you be brilliant at different times, then there's one bad day, but don't stay in that space. Everyone has difficulties in speaking. I'm sure Davina herself.
Absolutely. Sometimes I forget. My issue is sometimes I forget what I want to say. So, but yeah.
Mine's being overwhelmed basically in the moment. Like maybe sometimes you get a lot of responses and it's like, oh, lost track.
Right.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right. So it happens to all of us. The best, the worst, the middle. So don't be afraid to try, and don't beat yourself too much if you're not the most brilliant public speaker. Because we're not aiming for that, right? We just want to be good at it. Now the skill of your arsenal for interviews, for any work-related matters you're tending to, etc. Okay, so with that, let me formally thank you, Davina, for being a part of this session this evening, and actually being the first kind of speaker on our ProDev Live series that we're having for this upcoming Rotary year.
Thank you so much for having me as well.
It's a pleasure. All right, guys, that is a wrap as well. I want to thank you for logging in, whether it was earlier, now, middle. Thank you for being a part of this initiative. There's more to come. And I'm sure if you keep close to our Instagram page, like I mentioned, you're going to get the same key takeaways that we shared this evening. We're going to also share those quick Instagram and TikTok handles that Davina recommended. If you're curious to learn more about public speaking and want to get better at it, there are more persons that can give you some great details. And stay tuned as well. We have more events coming up from the Rotaract Club of Barbados. So just stay close to our Instagram page or other social media handles, and you will get the good stuff. So thank you for being a part of this evening. Have a great weekend ahead. Stay blessed.